Okay, so welcome back to yet another edition or session of our teaching and learning series, and we're going to continue from where we stopped last time. And today we're going to look at a new topic which we call equations. I believe you looked at equations in primary, but we're going to explain further and get to know further what we mean when we talk about equations. Now, number one, what is an equation? We describe an equation to be a mathematical statement with equal signs. I believe you all know equal signs, because I'm sure in primary you looked at addition signs, you looked at subtraction sign, multiplication sign, division sign, and the equality sign or the equal sign. So an equation is a mathematical statement with equal signs. Now when I talk about a mathematical statement, this is, I may call it a word problem. In other words, it is a mathematical thing we have to solve, only that it has been put in words. So we have to reduce it into an expression and then solve it accordingly. So for example, an example of a mathematical statement, I can say, I think of a number, I add 3 to that number, and then after I've added 3 to the number, the result that I get, I multiply that result by 5. After multiplying by 5, I get my answer as 25. So the mathematical statement in this case is, I think of a number, I add 3 to the number, I multiply 5 by the result, and that, after all that, my value or my answer is going to be 25. So that is a mathematical statement. In other words, that is a mathematical statement in terms of words. So I can give you maybe another example. I think of a number and I add 2, and then I divide the result by 4, and I end up with the answer as 10. That also is a mathematical statement. Now, when we're working out or when we're solving these particular equations, there is what we call unknowns. Now, the unknowns in this case are these numbers which you've thought of, which you do not know. So when we're representing the unknowns, we represent them using any letter of the alphabet, a letter of your choice. Though there are very common letters we use usually, and that is X and Y. So I can say that maybe I think of a number and I add 3 to it and get 5. So I can let that number which I've thought of to be X, and then I work accordingly to get the answer. So the X is the unknown in this case. Then, when I'm solving this equation when I'm looking for the value of X, I use a process called solving the equation. In other words, after I've gotten the unknown, that number which I'm thinking about, and I'm trying to work out this mathematical statement so as to get the answer, that is what we call solving the equation. We can look at maybe a few examples to help us understand what we mean by solving equations. Example number one, I can decide to say, I think of a number, like the example which we said at first. I think of a number, I add 3 to that number, and then I multiply the result by 5 to get 25. So I've thought of a number, I've added 3 to that number. After adding 3, I multiply 5 to the result which I get, and then my answer is 25. So how am I going to solve this? Number one, I first convert this mathematical statement into an equation or an expression. So when I think of a number, I can let this number to be X. So the number I've thought about is X. So I think of a number X, I add 3 to it, so it becomes X plus 3. After adding 3, I multiply 5 to the result which I've got. That means that I'm going to multiply 3, I'm going to multiply 5 in the whole of X plus 3. So I'm going to have 5 brackets X plus 3, and then equals 25. So my expression in this case is 5 brackets X plus 3 close brackets is equal to 25. So I'm required to solve for the value of X. Number one, what do I start with? I start by expanding this expression. Now we realize that the 5 which is outside the bracket multiplies every number or every element that is inside the bracket. So that means the 5 is going to multiply the x, and the 5 is also going to multiply the 3. So in this case, I'm going to say 5 times x plus 5 times 3 is equal to 25. So when I have 5 times x, I get 5x plus 5 times 3 gives me 15 is equal to 25. So my expression in this case is 5x plus 15 is equal to 25. So after I've done that, I collect like terms together. In other words, I collect the ones which are unknowns on one side and also put the known ones on one side. So that means that I'm going to transfer my 15, which is on the left hand side, to the right hand side. In other words, I'm going to make it to cross equal signs. And how do I do that? I subtract 15 on both sides of the equal sign. So I'm going to have 5x plus 15 minus 15 is equal to 25 minus 15. Of course, the two 15s on the left hand side will cancel because 15 minus 15 gives us 0. So on the left hand side, I'm left with 5x. Then on the right hand side, I have 25 minus 15, which gives me 10. So my expression in this case reduces to 5x is equal to 10. Now, how do I get the value of x? I simply divide both sides by 5. So I'm going to divide both sides on the left hand side. I'm also going to divide 5 on the right hand side. So in this case, we have the expression as 5x is equal to 10. So like we're saying, I divide 5 on both sides. 5x divided by 5 gives me x. On the right hand side, I have 10 divided by 5 and I get 2. So my x is going to be equal to 2. So going through all those steps, I've done what I call solving an equation. So like we said, you first expand and then you work out accordingly until you get to the value of x. Maybe we can look at another example to help us understand further how to solve the equations. Maybe in this case I can, the example says, I think of a number, I subtract 6 from that number, I multiply -4 to the result, and my answer is -8. So I think of a number, I subtract 6 from that number, and I multiply -4 to the result, and I end up with -8. So I'm required to, first of all, reduce this statement into an expression or an equation. So I can say that let the number I've thought about be y, because you said you can use any letter of the alphabet, but preferably x and y. So in this case I can say that let my number be y. So y, I subtract 6 from y, so that is y minus 6. Then I multiply -4 to the result, so that means I'm going to get -4 times y minus 6 equals -8. So that is my expression in this case, and I'm required to solve it until I get the value of y, because I've let my number which I thought about to be y. So I have to solve accordingly until I get to the value of y. So number one, what do I do? Like we did in the previous example, you start by expanding this expression. So I'm going to expand this expression, and remember that the number which is outside the bracket multiplies every number which is within the bracket. So I'm going to multiply -4 by y. I'm also going to multiply -4 by -6. So when I get -4 times y, I get -4y. When I get -4 times -6, I end up with +24. So in this case, on my left hand side, I have -4y plus 24 is equal to -8. That is my expression. And in this case, I'm required to solve this equation until I get the value of y. Now, number one, what do I do after? I'm supposed to collect like terms. In other words, take put the unknowns on one side and put the knowns on the other side. So that means that I'm going to transfer the 24 to the right hand side. Now, how do I transfer the 24 to the right hand side? I subtract 24 on both sides. So in this case, I'm going to have negative 4y plus 24 minus 24 is equal to negative 8 minus 24. Of course, the 24 on the left hand side cancels because we know that 24 minus 24 gives us 0. So on the left hand side, I'm left with negative 4y. Whereas on the right hand side, I had negative 8 minus 24. Now, negative 8 minus 24 gives me an answer of negative 32. So my expression in this case is going to be negative 4y is equal to negative 32. Now, in this case, I'm required to solve for the value of y. How do I solve for the value of y? By dividing both sides by negative 4. So I'm going to divide negative 4 on my right hand side and divide negative 4 on my left hand side. Now, negative 4y divided by negative 4 gives me y. That is for the left hand side. Whereas negative 32 divided by negative 4 gives me an answer of positive 8. I've solved my equation and ended up with the value of y, which is 8. So that means that the number I thought of was 8, because I let my number to be equal to y. I've solved y and got my value as 8. So that is how we solve equations. Maybe I can leave you with one question to help you practice and understand these things deeper. So maybe, perhaps you can write this question somewhere. I think of a number. I add 7 to that number. I multiply the result by 2. And my answer is going to be 14. I repeat. I think of a number. I add 7 to that number. I multiply the result by 2. And my value is going to be 14. The question is, what is the number? So you can work out that question to help you understand and go through the steps which we have discussed for better understanding. Otherwise, thank you for listening. We shall proceed in another part where we look at what we call inequalities.